Well, hey, Pastor Clint, this is an exciting opportunity to do a podcast together, and we've been wanting to do this for a while.
Yep.
So this is kind of our inaugural. I don't know if I said that right, but this is our first time to do it, which that means that. And so this will be great. We've got some exciting news to share with the people of Family Life Church and Carlton campus. So I thought this would be a great way to do that, and so I'm hoping they'll be tuning in to our conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
But what we want to talk about is our Carlton campus and how that came about and future plans.
Right.
So 2017 was actually the date that this vision came to us as a church. It's crazy that's been 7 years ago now.
Right.
But I remember when the network leadership came to us and asked us as a church if we would be willing to take on a church plant, literally, in Carlton. The church has been in Carlton, the Assemblies of God Church, for over 50 years.
Yeah, right.
But had just, what I say, aged out, and I mean that in the most respect. It just kind of gone to the place where they could not afford to bring in a pastor, and there was just few members.
Right.
And so as a church, we stepped into that plan, and after, I would say, considerable amount of prayer and unity on the subject, everyone's very excited. And so we launched into this, making sure that there would be a healthy church in the city of Carlton.
Yeah.
And so we took on that project, that vision, and it was exciting. And that was 2017. We got launched into it, and then you and Kim actually became a part of our church just not even a year later.
That's right. That's right. In fact, God had dropped us in the middle of Carlton, in 2017 itself. About a year, we lived there about a year prior to coming on staff at FLC, which actually next month is 6 years of us being on staff at FLC. So time does go by fast. But yeah, so God dropped us into Carlton, and so we were there and praying and waiting for God's next step for us. What was that going to be? And ultimately, through relationships that we have that are mutual, we connected, had coffee a few times, and then came on staff. And so God had a plan all along, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I always like to say there are no random acts. And isn't it interesting that God had in 2017 had the network talking to us. Plans were in place.
That's right.
And at that very time, you and Kim are in Carlton. We don't know of each other.
Yeah, that's right.
But God is working there. So, you know what? I've always been absolutely convinced that God brought you and Kim for that reason and that purpose. And I love how God always brings a plan together. And so the interesting part about this whole thing is that we launched into this thinking a lot of things, actually, what it would look like as you know, we were given 2 acres of ground there on 3rd Street in Carlton, and with the freedom to do whatever we needed to do, with the caveat that there would always be an Assemblies of God Church in Carlton. And
That's right.
So that was the exciting part. We sprung into action literally, and found that the building was not going to be salvageable. So clearing that property, selling an acre of it, selling an acre of the Newburgh property with the intention of raising enough capital to put up a building. And so we were well on our way to that. And really, amazingly, we raised more money than we've for any other project so far since I've been here anyway. And I know that was an amazing thing. Many people gave sacrificially and believed in that vision. Long story, as we're trying to navigate towards where we're going to meet and how we're going to launch, a little thing called the pandemic happened right in the middle of it. And
Maybe somebody remembers that, one or 2 people, right?
Yeah, that was quite a season.
Yeah.
And so we obviously got a lot of our options taken away from us, but just continued to pray and believe God and ask God what we wanted to do, what He wanted to do for us, and how we would accomplish this. So
That's right.
We continued in the vision, and we actually came up with an idea of serving in Carlton. Hey, let's serve the city before we even have a church there. And I know that you and the team of people went in and built credibility in the community.
That's right. So for our for our Serve the City Day annually, we began to serve at the school or around town, or at the soccer complex or different places with key, relationships and individuals in the town that we got to know who are influential people there. We were able to get in there and serve and begin to develop those relationships that still exist to this day and will continue to exist, right? As long as we're there. So
Absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely. And one of those key relationships gave us the opportunity to actually have our first service,
That's
which
right.
was an Easter service on Easter Sunday
That's right.
in a winery, which is this beautiful building, and almost 100 people that day. You
Yeah,
talk about
it was beautiful.
excitement and energy. But we still didn't have a place to meet on a consistent basis. Going into that summer, the pavilion happened, and you and a group of people met several times during that summer.
That's right. It wasn't without its difficulties that summer. We recall one Sunday that it was 115 degrees, and and then one Sunday where we couldn't have things because something else happened with the van or something like that, and so but yet we persevered through 5 of those 6 Sundays that we were scheduled to have, and began with that group of people, that core group of people that I think back to, and I think was about 17 people originally that began meeting in the soccer complex. So
Yeah. And I loved it because as we talked about it and prayed about it, we said, well, we know what we can't do. Obviously, we don't have a place to meet, but what can we do? Let's just start there.
Yeah.
And so that was a great time to see that, doing what we could do.
That's right.
And then just continue to wait on God. And all of a sudden the school became available, which we didn't see coming.
That's right.
And it happened rather quickly. All of a sudden, you just got a call and said, "Here's the keys."
It did. We had ultimately been set to go before the pandemic, and
That's
then,
right.
And then that came along and kind of shut those things down. But miraculously, really, the school district in Yamhill County, in Carlton and Yamhill, said, yes, we're going to go ahead and reopen that to you guys if you'd like to meet in the building. And so we were able to get into it pretty quickly. Like you said, they said, come, fill out the paperwork, get the keys like a few weeks later, and we were ready to roll to look ahead and set our first Sunday in the school. So yeah,
Right.
It was exciting.
Wow, that has been great. And launching there this last November marked 2 years.
That's right.
And had a great celebration of celebrating 2 years.
Yeah.
That core team of 17 has grown.
Yeah.
And you've seen a real solid body of Christ meeting there every week.
That's right. We had a total attendance of about 17 or 18 people initially. And to this day, that team remains. Maybe a couple of extra people. Another couple was added or 2, but that core team remains the same and a little larger. And God has taken us, step by step through it. It's hard to believe it's been 2.5 years, right?
Wow.
I can't even believe that hardly.
Yeah.
But God has been faithful to see us from 17 to into the 20s, and we stayed there a while, and then ultimately it took us into the 30s with the number of people who were coming, and he's seen us through to the 40s and the 50s and even into the 60s and 70s and 80s some weeks here and there. So it's been exciting, but he's really building and growing us at a pace that's going to be sustainable and right for us. So it's been really cool.
No, we've loved seeing that. It's undeniable that God is using you and Kim and your leadership and your gifting there in that unique body that meets there. And we say a lot, one church, 2 locations.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a mantra for any church that has a second campus or maybe a third campus, different ones. And as I was sensing, just like, God, what do you have next for us? What's coming down the road? What do we need to look down the road? I don't want to be paranoid since the pandemic, but I think what the amazing thing is that everybody that lived through that saw the world change, the whole world change in 1 week. And unfortunately, you and I both know some pastors that had multiple campuses going into that. And when we came out of it, they weren't able to bring every one of those back, and they lost a couple of those.
That's right.
So as I was considering that and thinking, what's next down the road, and seeing the growth in Carlton, and the way I've said it too is that it's undeniable that God has placed you there as a leader, and you need the freedom to be able to lead and take Carlton the direction that God is laying on your heart. And so with conversations with our lead pastor in our network,
That's right.
and just talking with him, he says, this is a natural progression that churches go through, and that there are times when that church needs to step out and become their own, and move ahead on their own, and kind of graduate, if you will. I don't. Some people say, well, it's like kids growing up and they have to move out of the house, but I like more graduate. I think that's a good thing.
That's true.
So, and one of the leadership principles that I've been given by people a lot smarter than me, they say, when you're going to do change, always take your time in doing that and put it down the road. So in January, you and I began to talk about what would it look like if we took a year in formulating a plan where Carlton would stand on their own as an Assemblies of God church.
That's right.
But standing on their own as I was going to say, it's not an independent church because it's part of the Assemblies of God Fellowship,
True.
But it becomes its own body.
Yeah, its own sovereign church.
That's
what
the word.
we will become. And I was, I had to be told that too, to say what is the correct verbiage for it. So Lee McLeod was great to let me know that. But yeah, becoming our own sovereign church over the course of the remainder of this year and into early next year is the goal, and that's where we're headed. I think both you and I probably have had times in our lives where we've moved too fast on things, and maybe people felt left behind or out of the know. And
Absolutely.
so this is really a great amount of time, I think, and as we've talked, we believe. Will be enough time for people to get on board, to really understand, to feel, get a feel for our hearts for both campuses, and ultimately to know that it's a good thing, that it's an exciting thing, and that that we are both excited about it. So it's a positive thing for sure.
Yes. So we want to communicate this clearly, and we've taken the time to talk. Obviously, this was something that came out of our board of directors and prayerfully considered, and we had unity there, and then meeting with really that important core of leaders in Carlton and talking it through with them. And I'm always one, when we're going to make a change or when we're trying to navigate towards somewhere, we say, let's follow the green lights, and say, are there any red lights here? And I think we've begun to see just green lights and opportunities to move forward. It's not going to be without faith and challenge.
Sure.
I'd like to say we have more than enough money to fund both campuses from here till Jesus comes. But that guarantee is not there. And but I think as we move forward in and trying to make the wise decision, I know that God is going to raise up the support in that campus for that, and see something just move into the future. So we wanted to get the word out to our people, and so when somebody comes to them and says, "Hey, have you heard?" They can say yes, and it's exciting.
That's right.
This is a good thing. And Clint, I want you to know I love you, and I've always loved you, and that doesn't end. We're moving on, but it's not a personality conflict or something where you just couldn't handle me anymore. Or, well, you haven't told me that personally.
No.
But I've also had to follow other leaders, and I know that sometimes I was ready to go and set out in the course that God had for me. And you have been fantastic at being such a blessing to both these campuses, and really filling roles and stepping in when I needed it and when the church needed it. And that has just been an incredible blessing. So I also want to say that. And but I think I don't want to be in your way, because again, God has brought about this church. I think it's undeniable, and He's planted you and Kim right in the middle of that community. So
that's right.
Hey, let's see what God's going to do, and how He's going to lead.
Yeah. Well, just thinking about it, I mean, you talked about the idea of stepping out in faith. It's not going to be without faith, and there's certainly you've led this church here for 20 years. We just passed that 20-year mark of you being here at Family Life Church. And so for 20 years, you have led this church with faith and faithfully to see what is the next step here, and so that's always something that we have to live with, right? Like,
Right.
We're not guaranteed, but we by faith step out. And there's an entire chapter in Hebrews about that, right? An entire chapter about faith and people who stepped out in faith and the things that I'll say that God accomplished by them stepping out in faith, right? And so that is true in this as well. And so, God has, as you know, and I know, maybe not everybody knows, but God has opened up the opportunity for Kim and I to move into Carlton. So we started there before when we first met, and here we are now going to be moving into Carlton in just a couple of months. And so we'll just be right down the street from the school and
That's so
have
great.
the ability once again to walk around town and be present there day in, day out.
Wow.
To a greater degree than we have been, the past few years. But
I
we're
love
excited
that.
about that. Yeah.
I love that. When I heard that, I went, perfect. It just sounds like God to
Yeah,
me.
that's right.
And another confirmation that God has brought you. And as pastors, sometimes those questions, there's like, man, am I doing anything here? Is this going well? And those are like those little equalizers that come out that go, boom, I know where you're at. I'm going to provide for you.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I know that you have met with our network leadership, and the process of becoming that sovereign church is some pretty, I would say, easy steps, very a few things that have to happen that can be done. And I think with our time frame, we can see those done, and you're going to be working on those over the next few months.
That's right. The initial things that we've talked about is ultimately moving to have our own board for the Carlton church, and ultimately we'll have to have bylaws that we'll put together and put into place, and those will be voted on eventually, and all of that. So there are some steps moving forward that we'll have to work towards, and just the continued building of the body there, people connecting. There are clear steps that we're moving towards right now, and no doubt we'll be there by the end of the year and into next year. So
Right. And some of the other practical things that people might be wondering about, as Family Life Church blesses this body as they move on, we want to do everything we can to be a blessing and to allow you to function like you're functioning. And every time I visit, I'm just amazed at that dedicated team of people that come into that little gymatorium.
that's right.
And turn it into an auditorium and really a sanctuary. It's so beautiful, and the system is beautiful. That is all being gifted to that body, that they're going to take everything they need to be a church and go. The property, which is right across the street from the school, is also going to be deeded over to your new entity, or the church's new entity that's going to become its own sovereign church. And so I think that's also very exciting, is that this is a church plant, but you've got a pretty good head start. I like that.
Yeah, that's right. And we've begun to, in Carlton, once a month, every first Sunday of the month, is not only communion, but it's also a building fund Sunday, where the people of Carlton can give towards that, and we're just putting that away to be able to look ahead to whatever God might have for that property. So,
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about being the Oregon Ministry Network, being a part of it, is that they're so supportive, and they give us the freedom to be the expression of Christ in that community that God's laid on our heart. And with that property gifted to you, that gives you the freedom to utilize that as leverage for however you might do that. And again, the caveat that there will be a church, which we know that's going to be.
Yeah, that's right.
So basically, the next steps that we're going to be seeing, and that people that are watching this might be need aware of. Obviously, by the time they're going to be listening to this podcast, you had already shared this with your church on a Sunday, and we would be sharing this with Family Life Church on the Newburgh on a Sunday, and also in letter form.
That's right.
And as we were talking while we were setting up, we can talk about it for probably 6 months, and month 7, somebody's going to go, "Wait a minute, something going on?"
Yeah, that's right.
So
we'll always miss somebody.
that's
somewhere,
right. That's right. But we really do want to be very clear in our
that's
communication
right.
and make sure that people know that we've done this prayerfully, and with consideration, and asking God for the wise steps to make.
That's right.
And not something so fast, that all of a sudden we're not ready. But I know that at our next annual business meeting, that will be the time where we do the necessary action we need to as a church body to transfer things like the property and to clearly set that launch. So that's what these people can expect. They're not only hearing about it regularly, but into probably February. When we have that meeting. Sometimes I think we have it in March. So, but it's going to be the first in 2025. I can't believe it.
Right.
It's I can't believe we're talking about that, because you said I've been here 20 years. It's amazing. I came when I was 10 years old, and so I can't be that old. But
that's right.
It's going to come quick. But I think it's also just going to be an amazing new season for what God's going to do there.
This year it will pass quickly, but we'll have more communication with everyone involved in this.
Yeah.
And frankly, I just want to also back up just a little bit and say how grateful that we are, certainly to you and to Sandy and FLC. By no means am I looking for, you've talked about our relationship. We worked closely together for the last 6 years, and I've enjoyed every minute of that. And so it's been a blessing, and just really the giving of this church, this campus, over that time towards that is something that will never be overlooked, right? Like, that is an incredible thing to raise as much money as was from the people of this church, and in just it's not like one rich person gave all of it.
You're
Everybody sacrificed and
Yes.
gave towards it. And when you sacrifice and give towards kingdom purposes, it's going to multiply. And God is multiplying it now and will continue to multiply it. So that's pretty cool.
Well, and that's why I started with the vision that
That's
God laid on our heart to see a healthy, active church, Assemblies of God church in the middle of Carlton. And every dime we gave was an investment towards that, like into that community. And so we don't say mission accomplished because there's so much more to do.
Yeah.
But I think we can say that everything we've given was for this very
That's right.
day and moment and what's going to be happening. And so
And
that's
what a
exciting.
way to hand that off.
Oh, yeah.
For a new group of people to
Right.
run with that and to see God grow it even more. So
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for taking this time and for being willing to be a leader that steps in faith. And I think this has been a great opportunity to kind of share that. And
that's right.
I know that if people have any questions, they're always free to contact either one of us.
Absolutely.
And we're telling, this is the whole story.
Yeah, that's right. We want to be very transparent with it all,
Absolutely.
the entire way. So,
Absolutely. So, hey, thank you for your time and thanks for this opportunity. And I do want to shout out to Evan Ingstrom for putting all this together. He's making us look and sound
right.
good. So
That's right.
we're
Takes
not-
a lot of work.
That's right, because I'm not smart enough.
I know.
I'd have done this on my iPhone.
No.
So,
Well, thank you, Dave.
all
Appreciate
right.
it.
Thank you.